As Daniel writes, dealing their cards from the darkness, the shadow masters create reality, simply inventing the good guys and the bad guys as well. We'll be back with Daniel and your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. We've got Daniel Estulin. We've got his work, Shadow Masters. So how was this received, this book? It's relatively new, and it's pretty hot, Daniel. You name names.
Well, I do, as I always do. I think the only way, actually, one of the reasons for my success with the Bilderbergers and now with the Shadow Masters is I name names, show deeds, documents, photographs. There's over 120 photographs, pages of photographs in the Shadow Masters. There's very little the American government can do or say because, again, they're profoundly upset that this book came out, and again, they're needless to say, they're not saying anything at all publicly, but my people in the State Department have told me that, the chapters on Victor Bout are absolutely devastating to them. The American government has spent over $80 million in the last 15 years trying to show the world that this Victor Bout is in fact a merchant of death, and I showed that how the American government has actually worked hand in glove with some very unscrupulous people, amongst them one of the leading journalists in America, Douglas Farah, was perjured himself, in Congress when he under oath lied about Victor Bout and his role in the international African gun trade. I also have, yesterday I received from my sources inside the Bilderberg conference, George, the actual list of meeting agenda items, which I'd like to share,
Sure.
exclusive with your readers. Before I do, may I actually give a phone number out for people to call and get the book?
Of course, and your website, which we've got linked for you, Daniel.
It's a 1-800-556-2012, tryingday.com. My publisher, Chris Milligan, a very brave man. Very few people would actually take on the task of publishing Shadow Masters. Both Chris and I, are playing with our lives. But again, I think it's worth it because, liberty, how many zeros is it worth in terms of, immortality and human freedom? Again, 1-800-556-2012. The book has been sold to half the world already. People are absolutely, awed by the contents of the book. I show how the American government and the Bilderbergers destroyed Russia back in the 1990s on purpose. Everything we've been told about the Russian, falling apart in the 1990s is a lie. It was done on purpose with Bilderbergers working from behind the scenes. I also explain, how the international drug trade works and how Afghanistan has nothing to do with bringing democracy, to this godforsaken land. They talk about Victor Bout. I talk about, the nuclear trade, the gun trade and arms trade. There's a lot of material in this book which has never, ever came out before. And again, 1-800-556-2012. You can go also to my website, danielestulin.com. We're putting up for next week for the Bilderberg Conference an English language website where we'll give exclusive updates on everything that's going on. Now, I'm a bit disappointed with the Bilderbergers, I must say. I've been tracking them for so long. You would think that after so many years, they'd come up with some kind of security system where I wouldn't get my hands on the information before the attendees themselves. The agenda items that I have received, the attendees will only be receiving this Friday. So actually, if they're listening to this, I'm reading the agenda items from the Bilderberg Conference next week in Spain. Number one, subject on the agenda, will the euro survive? There is a lot of concern that euro may not survive. Number two, developments in Europe. Europe's exit strategy, ... on hold, question mark. Now, the explanation is that the markets are starting to recognize that the monetary policy impact that the struggling Eurozone constituents will have on the European Central Bank's ability to reverse ultra-easy money conditions. Now, with aggressive austerity plans facing Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland, a risk of a double-dip recession for the Eurozone rises dramatically, just as I accurately predicted immediately following Bilderberg's 2009 meeting in Greece. Number 3 point on the agenda is, do we have the institutions to deal with world economy? A very interesting question because, again, it puts in question the entire world apparatus control of the Bilderbergers. Number 4, Greece, lessons and forward-looking strategy. So obviously Greece is very high on the agenda. Number 5, NATO in Afghanistan, the practical agenda for the alliance, and I guarantee you it has nothing to do with bringing peace to that land. It has to do with the drug trade and how the drug trade actually fuels the world economy and actually might save the American Wall Street from collapsing. Number 6, Iran and Russia, economic and financial threats to the alliance. Number 7, the consequences of war against terrorism. Number 8, the influence of domestic issues on American foreign policy. Number 9, the outlook for Japan's economy. And finally, number 10, the future of the U.S. dollar, alternative scenarios. As you know, the list actually comes with brief explanations. I've given you one as far as Eurozone is concerned. Now, the alternative scenarios for the United States dollar are terrifying. You know, it looks like Bilderberg is positioning itself to destroy the United States dollar. I'm saying it exclusively for the first time on George Noory's show. The Bilderberg is positioning itself to destroy the United States dollar, according to one Bilderberg US delegate who stated candidly that, I quote, the Obama government may not be in the position to do anything about it. Now, if the United States dollar plunged, the collapse of the fictitious mass of outstanding dollar-denominated internal credit brought about by either devaluation or a hyperinflation of what are nominally U.S. dollar-denominated obligations would in itself prompt the sudden collapse of the entire world physical economy, George, into a generation-long global new dark age over our planet as a whole. Now, let me say it again. If ratified, the Bilderberger plan would result in a virtually certain destruction of the United States, and this has been the treasonous intent of this group since the first meeting back in 1954. Again, the number, please, for my publisher is 1-800-556-2012. These are brave men and women who are actually working 24 hours a day around the clock to actually get this information out, and needless to say, without any collaboration from the mainstream press.
And ironically, Daniel, some members of the group are Americans, so it's like they want to bring down their own country.
Well, unfortunately, these are traitors to, in our midst. These people do not represent in any way, shape, or form the United States or the interests of the people of the United States. They have no respect for the United States Constitution, as Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller have so many times publicly stated. Yet, for some strange reason, people don't seem to understand. Again, it is up to the younger generation who are coming up behind us to save us, or to save the world, because when we are old or dead, unfortunately, somebody is going to have to take up the mantle and do something to save the world, from these people's, dark plans.
Tell me about the diamond trade, Daniel, then we'll take some phone calls. How widespread is this stealing of diamonds, selling it on the black market?
It's an amazing market, and again, I saw it, unfortunately, I do mean unfortunately, too close and personal. I was in Congo. One of the reasons that they actually got rid of Victor Bout is that he was too close to Jean-Pierre Bemba, a man who was, contesting the presidential elections in Zaire, what is now, cynically called the Democratic Republic of Congo. He had actually, the Bears, the Diamond Cartel, came to Bemba, and they offered him a deal, 50% for the Bears, 30% for Bemba, and Bemba said, no, the people of my country should get a little bit more. Now, Bemba is not, is not a Mother Teresa, but he actually, had the gall, the audacity, to ask the Bears, instead of taking a 50% cut, to take a 30% cut, and they balked. They said no. They got rid of Bemba. They brought in Kabbalah, and now Bemba is in prison in The Hague, waiting, actually being tried as we speak, for crimes against humanity. The United States government whisked him away with the United Nations, under the auspices of the United Nations. I was there when all of it came down, and I saw how they did it. Again, the diamond trade is a very important trade. The terrorists, the Al-Qaeda, the Hezbollah, they make a lot of money from the diamond trade, but also the CIA. What they do is they use the diamond trade to actually finance a lot of their dirty operations, which, needless to say, we will never see or read about on the cover of the New York Times. I wonder why. Yep. By the way, Douglas Farah, the man who was the prime antagonist of Victor Bout, he was the branch chief for the Washington Post in West Africa. He was fired. I don't exactly know why, but he certainly